What up, everybody? It's the Built Different Podcast. Again, as usual, haven't shouted him out in a little while. Thank you, Leonard, for the intro music, Elemental's music. Check his beats out, buy it, purchase some, reach out to him. Today, we want to talk about the rise of injuries in sports, and unfortunately, it's affected all of us as sports fans, as fans of specific fighters, players, individuals in individual sports. It's unfortunately on the rise from years ago, and just want to talk a little bit about it, why it may be happening, what we've seen, and maybe some solutions. Uh, First off, have you any of you guys had an injury when playing sports, or like Sean? I know you're a disc golf player. Have you experienced anything in that realm, or in any other sports? I know we talked concussions earlier, but any sports related injuries from playing, a sport you maybe recreationally or like as on a team.
Yeah, my big injuries have been the concussions. Um, Three or four out of the five of them were from sports, technically. So, but outside of that, I mean, not too many injuries. I had a fractured wrist when I was younger.
Mm,
But overall, generally speaking, fairly healthy. Haven't had any of the big, uh, tears or soft tissue injuries that, people have like years long recoveries for, thankfully. Um, but yeah, so I've been fairly lucky in that regard. Justin, how about you?
I've never had like a soft tissue injury. I've never torn my ACL, but when I was in middle school, I played football and I broke my wrist. I had to get or not get surgery. I had to wear like a cast and stuff. Um, I used to do Muay Thai. I broke my nose. I got kicked in the face. I had to get surgery for that. I actually just had to get surgery again on it like 6 years later because I had a deviated septum from it and it was still bothering me pretty bad. And then those are like the two like major injuries that I've had. And then just from jujitsu, I've had like really bad like cauliflower ear issues, which is more annoying than anything. But yeah, definitely the broken nose is the big issue because that just if you don't get that taken care of properly, it's like a domino effect. It affects your ability to breathe, which affects your ability to sleep, then makes you tired during the day. It's a nightmare.
mm,
Yeah, it's
that sounds bad.
yeah. So I'm very glad that I finally got that taken care of. So now I can breathe through my nose. I don't snore anymore. It's beautiful. I love it.
It's a whole new world for you.
Yeah, exactly.
The cauliflower area. What do you do? Just drain that typically.
Yeah, oh my gosh. I had a really bad case of it. So what happens is what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to like get a syringe and suck to take the blood out of the ear, but then you have to keep it like compressed so that the tissue heals together. But I kept going to these urgent care centers to do it, and they would drain the blood out, but they wouldn't compress it, so it would just come back and my ear would fill back up. And so I kept having to
Mm,
go back. And there's these little magnets you can buy like online that you put on the front and back of your ear to keep it compressed. But the ones that I bought were too strong, and so they gave me pressure necrosis, and my ears started turning black, and I
oh
got like
my god,
yeah, I got like an infection and stuff, and I had to go to the emergency room, and it was a nightmare, man. I thought I was gonna lose my ear, but
Jesus.
yeah, but thankfully I found a really good ENT that managed to just like sew like a piece of plastic through my ear and just like kept it compressed, and so it healed, and I still have my ear, so I'm happy.
No, I never even, not that I look closely at your hair, but never noticed like any type of cauliflower. You know, a lot of guys and girls, well, mostly guys really in MMA tend to have keep especially wrestlers keep it for that. It's like their sign. You know what I mean? I'm a wrestler. I'm a grappler. I grind or whatever.
Yeah, I have it in both of my ears, but it's not that bad. I wear headgear now so that I don't have to deal with that ever again.
That's that's what I was gonna ask you if you wear headgear, but
Yeah, lesson learned.
um, for myself, I never like playing sports besides last April when I was dunking on Sean and landed funny on my leg. I got that some cartilage damage. Um,
Remember that.
Dunking on
but
me.
yeah,
You mean losing?
yeah, I went up for a dunk on Sean, man. He undercut me, and it was just bad.
It's,
No, that's not. That's obviously an embellishment. But no, that was a that was a cartilage, some cartilage damage I had. Playing sports, I never really had much of anything. I think the most I've gotten at the gym is like some nicks and some bruises and typical gym stuff. I've had like I think I've almost pulled like I've almost had something devastating happen with my hamstrings, but thank God it ended up being nothing. That was from like deadlift, like from lunges, like lunging with plates and the bar and all that. But other than that, thank God, never, knock on wood, never broken anything. No, tears, no, nothing like that. Thank God. So no concussions. I'm happy about that.
mm,
So what do we want to talk about as well with some of the rise of what's been happening in sports? You see, I guess football season's up and running now, so you're seeing just all of these injuries. Sean, is there any injuries that kind of stick out to you that are kind of more prevalent than others at this current time?
Um, I think the ones that, like there's been a lot of in so far in the first few weeks of the season, I've seen a lot of like hamstring injuries come up, groin injuries come up. And obviously, whenever someone does one of the big, ACL tears, like you always hear about that because it's season ending. The hamstrings and the groins and things like that are not as like severe typically, but they are more nagging. So you see them throughout the year, like the guy like or even I've seen a couple ankle injuries as well. Like those just nag, and it's like the player may be able to go out and suit up, but if they re-injure it or re-aggravate it, then they're out for the rest of the game or they're like limited. And so those have been, I think, what I've noticed a lot of, and um, more so than like necessarily the big injuries, even though there has been a decent amount of those as well.
How about you, Justin? I know your team recently had a rash of injuries. Your Cowboys.
yeah.
Anything that you're seeing out there?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I see like ACL injuries a lot, especially. I mean, not even just with like football, but I don't know if you saw the Gamrot Fiziev fight this past weekend. Fiziev tore his ACL in like the first round, I think. Yeah, I feel like that's a pretty common injury that I see a lot, and it's I feel like it's unfortunate because with like the Trayvon Diggs tearing his ACL, I heard that they were doing like a one-on-one drill or something like that, and like former Cowboys players were tweeting like, I don't understand why they do that drill during the season. It seems like an unnecessary risk like before a game or something. So I don't know. I feel like that's something where it could maybe it could have been avoidable or something like that. Maybe if they just took it more easy as the season goes on during like the week. I don't really know how football teams structure their practicing during the week, but um, I don't know. ACL injuries, I feel like, are just such a freak injury that just it happens out of nowhere. Sometimes it's a bad situation.
Yeah, the one of the things I was looking up when I knew we had this show was the how many times this happened. So I found like that it was a study done where it was from 2014 to 2020. Uh, there was like 379 ACL tears. 256 of them were during the gameplay, and
Mm.
118 of them were during practice. But also, those practice-based injuries were significantly higher in the preseason versus the remainder of the season. So it looks like it happens early on in the season, but it's a freak thing that happens, any time during the season. You want to essentially, if it God forbid it does happen, you want it to happen early in the year because you need that what is almost a year of recovery. And they've gotten better. Like you see people recovering a lot quicker, but it's still just that debilitating, nasty injury. Um, what about
It
Achilles? I mean, you. Sorry, go ahead, Phil.
it's fun, like not funny, but like the ACL injuries, it almost feels like the more athletically gifted and like the more like freak athletes start, becoming. Well, I mean, not that they weren't like, not that the athletes back in the day weren't freak athletes, but like these guys are constantly pushing the envelope and becoming, faster, better jumpers, just like athletically gifted people. And it's like, it's almost like their athleticism is now working against them in the fact that they're doing so many crazy things that their body almost can't keep up. Like that's how I've like felt. It's almost like it's working against them in that way.
Well, let's go there then. I was gonna touch on some other injuries. I guess we can kind of pivot back to those, but I that was the question I've had as well, and I think a lot of people have. It's like, sports medicine has gotten better. Technology is getting better, especially with us. But also too, like, athletes are, their nutrition is up, bigger, better, faster, stronger. Like, what do you guys contribute to the rise of these injuries? Because obviously, like you're saying, Sean, like, people are doing crazier things in these games and matches, and people are breaking all type of records. What could be contributing to somebody that's bigger, faster, stronger, better nutrition, better, everything than athletes of the past getting injured more often?
Not enough rest potentially, because the NFL schedule is very grueling. It's very like every Sunday, and then sometimes if you play on Sunday night, then you have to play on Thursday. So then it's you don't get as much rest, and maybe coaches try to cram more stuff into the practicing, and so I don't know. You don't get the adequate rest that your body needs each week, and eventually that kind of breaks down over the course of a season, or maybe even over the course of your career. I guess that's what I would guess.
Uh, I think that definitely plays a part in it. I think a couple other things that I would say may be factors is like the decreasing of preseason activity, right? For a lot of the starters, it's like you're no longer the starters don't play in 3 or 4 preseason games like they used to. They now play in maybe 1 or 2, and even then they play in a couple, like maybe a drive or a half at most. Um, I think that can play into it, and then also just like more people are, like the cuts that these guys are making, the stop on a dime, start back up, like the quick acceleration, deceleration, and change of direction. That's, I think, where we've seen, like, back in the day, running backs, were typically more, like, they still had, obviously, the shiftier guys as well, but there's a lot more guys that were just like, we're going to run through you. We're going to just, bully our way down the field. Now it's like, nobody's really like there's a couple guys who are still running through people, but there's a lot more guys who are jump cutting and avoiding and making these quick sudden movements to avoid contact, which is good in the sense that they're not getting hit, but that, like, how much can your knees and your ankles take of these quick cuts and stuff before they are getting pushed to their limits.
Yeah, I would agree with you both. And it's, I don't know, it's a weird thing now because you have evidence that shows when people sit out, like you said, Sean, for like and miss games and they're not active, there tends to be the risk of injury, higher risk of injury. Then you have the other side where people play too much, and there's also that side of that risk of injury. So it kind of ties into what's been happening lately. You take the NBA for instance, and NFL is trying to do it as well. Less preseason games. You see, starters playing in one game versus the 4 they used to play in, or 3 they used to play in. Really, um, what do you guys? How do you guys feel? What do you feel? How do you balance that? Like, what would be that balance? Because one way or the other, it seems like they're still getting injured. Um, I guess I would pivot to the question: how do you feel about load management? Because now the NBA is trying to crack down on the load management issue because, before it was pretty much you need to preserve a player during the season for their longevity, the longevity of their career. You sit them out a few games, and now you have situations where you like have Kawhi and some of these other players that sit out and are getting injured more than when they sit out than when they were more active. So how do you guys feel about load management? How do you get that? What's the potential way to get that balance that we're speaking of?
Hmm. You can go first, Sean.
I so I mean, I'm not, as a fan, I'm not in favor of load management because I want to see the best players out on the field as much as possible. Um, but from the perspective of player safety and player health, I do think, you know, some of these injuries that are occurring, you see guys go out of the games with cramps. It's because they're not hydrating enough, or they're not,
Mhm.
like taking care of themselves. They're out there too much. So it's like keeping an eye on things like that. Those are preventable injuries or preventable situations that players are missing time for because they are just putting themselves in a bad position health wise. So things like that, I definitely think load management in the sense of if someone needs to come off the field, then get them off the field. But and I think too, like we've seen a lot with running backs, like back in the even like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, there was a lot of teams that had the one guy who was like their lead running back, and he would run for
Mhm.
200 times a year, or 250, 300 times a year. Now it's like a lot of these teams are using what's called like a running back by committee, where, yeah, they
Mhm.
may still have their top guy, but they're working in the backup or even a couple guys that do a little different things to try to preserve. Because running back is one of those positions where you're constantly getting hit. Every time you run the ball, you're getting hit. Every time you have to block, pick up a block, you're getting hit. So it's like same thing with offensive linemen, but offensive linemen have a body type that's built to take hits a lot. The running backs are, well, they're still very built. They're not 300 and 300 plus pounds, most of them. So, um,
Derrick Henry.
yeah, other than King Henry, but yeah, so it's like I don't know. I think there's some positions maybe that you can do some more load management for, but overall, I think it's more just like using the personnel that you have to make sure that these guys are not getting too tired or not breaking down physically as best as possible.
Any thoughts, Justin?
Yeah, I agree. I think about like for the Cowboys, seeing how I remember when we drafted Zeke, he was like the workhorse.
Mhm.
He was on the field for every single play, and I mean, he was great when we the first few years, but it's kind of like you could see like the wear and tear over like 3 or 4 years. He was not the same player, and it was just because we put like all of our chips kind of on him as like the workhorse running back. Whereas now, you look at what we do now. The Cowboys have like Tony Pollard, but then they also have Rico Dowdle, and they have Deuce Vaughn, and it's like it's it gives players more of like a break. I feel it gives them more of a chance to recover, even just during a game where it's you come out of the drive for 3 or 4 plays. It just gives you the chance to just recover and take even just a little bit of a break. I feel like that over the longer season, I feel like that will make like a bigger difference, for like preserving the healthier team overall.
Yeah, it's a tricky situation, and it's a delicate balance, and it's weird because the NBA is a very obviously less physical sport than the NBA is a lot less physically demanding than the NFL, but they're load managing their players more, and I understand they play over a longer period of time, but
Mhm.
they are load managing their players, more than the NFL. You really can't do that in the NFL on a 17-week basis. So, but yeah, it's you want to see your favorite players play, and then you also too want to, you want to see everybody healthy and safe out there. So it's really tough. I mean, you think about the Jets and how high their hopes were with Aaron Rodgers,
Yeah.
and his injury was really crazy. The Achilles injury, actually seeing the physical,
Ugh.
you know, movement of that, tear, like that was a wild thing to see. And ESPN, all these networks kept playing it over and over again, but it just kind of highlighted like how crazy and how freak that injury was. Like, especially the weirdest injuries are the ones where you don't even see anybody around that person. Like, there's no contact at all, and that person goes down. Something major happened. It's like, damn, the cart's coming out. So
Whenever I hear the term non-contact injury, I just automatically assume it's like, okay, that guy's done for the year. Like it's
yeah,
such a bad thing.
yeah. Especially when you see them, it's just they plant their foot and just something weird happens, and they're done. Um, Speaking on that and the disappointment that the Jets fans have, in your lifetime as a fan of the different teams, different sports, different players, can you guys pinpoint a injury that really like just kind of took you out as a fan of, like I said, team or player?
Hmm.
Took took you out as in what?
Like as far as like you just like, damn, this sucks. Like it just ruined it ruined your season or ruined like it was a bad sports moment for bad sport moment for you.
I think the back issues that Tony Romo was having really cut his career short. I mean, I know I'm like a Cowboys fan and stuff, but I feel like his early years, it's like he didn't really have an offensive line that was super good. He didn't quite have a great defense. And then when they finally, got a decent defense together, they finally got, the Great Wall of Dallas and stuff. It was just like his back issues were just so bad at that point that it was like he took one hit and then he was out for the whole season, basically. Remember the whole 2015 season, we lost Tony Romo and Des Bryant. We went like 4-12 that year. And then of course, we drafted, Zeke, and we thought, wow, this is going to be a great year, and then we lost Tony Romo in the preseason. So it was, I think that was watching Tony Romo go down like that was hard because I thought he was a really good quarterback. I just thought he never really had the right situation.
Well, you guys got Dez out of. I mean, got Dak out of that, so
Yeah, yeah, I guess.
it worked. How about you, Sean?
I would say the most heartbreaking injury was, and obviously we all went there, but UCF, Mackenzie Milton's leg injury. That
Yeah,
that was brutal. I mean, I'm a huge, UCF football fan, and it was like we had so much going for us. We, undefeated an entire year, beat Auburn in the Peach Bowl, then undefeated the entire next year. Going like we're in the, I want to say it was the American Conference Championship game, and uh, you know, and that's where he got hurt, and it was, or no, it was the game right before that game that he got hurt, and against USF, and it was just like, not only was it bad as the fan, rooting for the team, but like when he got injured, it was, he blew up his knee, and they were saying like, he might need to get his leg amputated. Thankfully, he didn't. Um, but that was brutal, and and he was out for the rest of the year. He was out for, I think, most like all of the next year as well. And he just like, even when he came back, he never played for UCF again. I think he came back and played for FSU, and it just wasn't, it wasn't the same because he was a great quarterback, but like part of what made him great was his ability to scramble out and make plays with his legs, and his legs just weren't the same after that. So really ruined his chances of going, you know, further along to the NFL. And UCF obviously didn't win the Fiesta Bowl that year that he went out. So it was overall just a rough injury and rough time for UCF fans. How about you,
Yeah,
Ricky?
I think from the standpoint of just being like, oh man, I feel really bad for that person, and like it was just like because obviously we seen the Nick Chubb injury couple weeks
yeah,
ago or last week, I should say. That was really bad. You saw Alex Smith's injury, which
Yeah,
thank
that
God I
was
don't think
rough.
they replayed that one very much because it was I think worse than majority of the. And then there's been these horrific injuries in football, but they tend to be padded up. You have players kind of cover. I think for me, like in MMA, Anderson Silva breaking his leg and just seeing how just gruesome that was, and then you followed that up with Weidman doing it. You followed it up with
Connor.
McGregor doing it. McGregor's wasn't, thank God, as bad as the other two, but seeing those injuries and it's a little bit more quiet when that happens in a arena and hearing them like screaming and things like that and seeing the agony on their face because they don't have on a helmet. I think those injuries. And there was a I was trying to look up his name. It's weird now because when you look up leg break injury, because there was a guy back in the day UFC, like early days of UFC, that had that same type of leg break and people don't really talk about it. So I'm like searching for his name. I forget what his name was. And Weidman comes up, not even Anderson Silva or Conor McGregor. I don't know why, but those injuries and just seeing the leg break and snap, and then seeing them try to put their foot back down, it's just like a grotesque like ball of just like rubber. Those injuries are always kind of the ones that always stick with me. That I'm just kind of like, ugh, I hate seeing those. But from a sports standpoint, I mean, I think Super Bowl trying to make a Super Bowl run again last year, Ryan Jensen and his injury. There's been worse, during the Super Bowl when we won the Super Bowl. There's been a number of injuries that, from a team basis, that I was like, damn, you hate to see an injury that takes out that stops your team from being competitive and fulfilling their destiny or living up to their expectations. Um, so that being said, like what do you guys see as possible solutions to you know obviously we want to see athletes bigger, faster, stronger, making these crazy cuts, doing these wild things that athletes before them haven't done. But what are some of the solutions to kind of create that balance of having these athletes being the best version of themselves versus protecting them? You guys have any thoughts on that?
Get rid of turf.
Yeah, Sean. I know that was one of yours to getting rid of turf. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the NFL and honestly any sports league has to listen to their players. The players have
Mm,
said for years that certain fields are not, safe or non-conducive. You know, um, there's been research done. I think Sports Info Solutions just did a study.
mm,
They found that from 2017 to 2020, the average injuries per game on turf was higher for head injuries, ankle injuries, foot injuries, shoulder injuries, core injuries, arm and hand injuries, and it was equivalent for upper legs and hips. And the only one that was actually lower percentage of injuries was for lower legs and knees, which I was kind of surprised by. But it was not. It was a pretty small difference in the number of injuries for that. But you just see the amount of injuries each year that are occurring on turf, and out of like the top 10 stadiums with the highest injury percentage per game, 7 out of the 10 are turf fields as opposed to only 3 out of the 10 being grass fields. So,
mm.
you don't want to say that it's like correlation is causation or anything like that, but the players clearly don't like it. There's been doctors that have come out that said like when you stick your foot into the turf, it just doesn't give the same way that a grass field does. And I think that's the easiest solution is, yeah, these grass fields may cost a little bit more to maintain and stuff, but if it's going to potentially help players stay on the field, I think that's a no-brainer.
I agree.
Yeah. Have you guys ever touched like? Have you guys ever touched the AstroTurf before?
My high school has it, so yeah.
I think I have, yeah.
One of the weirder ones that I came across, I visited the Falcon Stadium. I did the stadium tour when it was first built, and it was a weird. It felt weird. Um, Obviously, it didn't feel natural, but the weird thing was when and I'm assuming a lot of the AstroTurf fields do this, but it had rubber ground up tires in the. So I'm like walking, and you're seeing you know, tire pieces flying up in there, which I thought was kind of weird. But I'm like, still, I was like, seems soft enough that it's not like this hard surface I would be afraid of landing on. But I guess when you're doing all these cuts and you're really being impacted, somebody else is driving you into the turf. It's a different story. Um,
Hmm.
any other solutions you guys can think of?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say load management necessarily, but just better health monitoring, better player monitoring. And I know, that's something that we haven't really talked about too much from our end, but something that we'd like to be a part of is helping to monitor the players um, as best as possible and provide additional uh, feedback, data like quanti- quantitative feedback for athletes. So I think that can help too. But and just understanding the players, their limitations, when they need to be on the field, when they need to be, resting and listening to the data when it comes to things like that.
Yeah, and I think it starts even in the younger years as well, because when I was doing this research, they were saying compared to over 20 years ago, for every ACL knee reconstruction operation, surgeons are now doing 20 to 29 times more operations. So for every one reconstructive surgery they did, now they're doing 20 to 29. So part of that too is educating younger athletes. I think preparing them better. It's not the preparation can't only be for these professionals. It has to be for these younger athletes, so that transfer of knowledge happens from their youth up until professional ranks, or even if they're doing it recreationally. And then Sean, I think yeah, that's what we kind of pride ourselves on, and obviously we haven't been able to show our solution yet, but that time's coming. And I think a lot of the discussions we've had recently show the importance and how important our technology is, because it differs from what else is out there.
Mm.
A lot of these systems that kind of players utilize, they can only utilize it in practice, where we can, we can be on an athlete during practice, we can be on them during a game. There's no impacts during contacts that would affect our technology. And I really think what we have in place and some of the plans we have in place is going to change the game. And I think this problem being so prevalent now, I want to say we're the solution to help potentially resolve that. So you guys will find out in the coming weeks and months like what we're doing, and see how important we are and how important what we're doing is going to be for not only and that's why I mentioned having a system in place where you can monitor them, not only their health but their performance. So we can do both. A lot of systems do one or the other, but I think we're really that system that bridges that gap and ties in performance, ties in health, and as we always say, we want people to be the best versions of themselves. So, with that being said, we want to wrap up. If you want to be the best version of yourself, follow us, and follow our journey, follow our story. Like, comment, subscribe. Have you had an injury that kind of stopped you in your tracks from finishing the season, or maybe it still hampers your performance today? Any moment in sports that kind of ruined your season? Any athlete that got hurt that really broke your heart? Like, comment, subscribe, and put your comments in the comments section. And again, thank you guys for tuning in, and we hope you have a productive week and have a blessed weekend. Thank you.